Hello. Today I am joined by, I'm going to say a very tired Nicola Graham, but maybe that's a negative way to start. But I'll say it anyway, and we'll dig into why that is. But yeah, Nicola, thank you for joining. So, a slightly different intro to this. So I was intrigued by your LinkedIn profile. Your title is a strategic advisor in human performance. So, firstly, welcome, and can you talk me through about that title, please?
Well, thank you for having me on, Andy. And yeah, that title. So I've been working with a guy called Alex, who's like a personal branding strategy advisor over the last couple of months. And it was really, I suppose, a bit of a pivotal point in my career, having finished my MBA last year, of, well, what am I going to do with this course? I didn't need an MBA to do the current job I was doing. So I'm an owner of a small business in Oxfordshire, physiotherapy primarily, but we've had various health-related services over the years, but primarily now focusing on physiotherapy, sports massage, and rehab. But as I say, I'd completed an MBA, and it was an opportunity to kind of, I suppose, reevaluate my skill set, reevaluate the areas that I really enjoy, where I'm good at, and where I want my future and next stage of my career to go. Hence why, if you don't put it out there, the conversations and the opportunities don't come. So I've, I suppose, purely from a description on LinkedIn, moved away from that managing director of Tops Health, my business in Oxford, and working towards this more strategic advisor with various organizations across human performance, because my skill set has stretched from medical healthcare in the NHS to for the last 16 years, I've worked in direct to consumer kind of private healthcare markets. And that has included healthcare, traditionally what we would call physiotherapy, but I've also set up a strength and conditioning facility, and we've run various services within what would be deemed the well-being kind of space, from Pilates, yoga, sports massage, psychology, nutrition, and physiology. So yeah, that's where I think I now sit, that bridges quite a lot of these markets under the banner of human performance.
That's interesting. How many different options did you have? How many times did you have to go through and pick that title?
As many times as 3 months is really no. It's a really, I really enjoyed working with Alex from a strategy kind of point of view. So I always thought, as you naively do when I suppose you think about marketing as an umbrella term, it's, again, obviously it's not. It's like, oh, it's just social, or it's just pretty pictures, and there's so much kind of strategy that goes behind it. And that was the same really around personal branding. It wasn't really about the words. It was much more of a deep dive into who are you, what's your experiences, what's your perspectives, what's your opinions, what's your philosophy. So really to kind of analyze you and your uniqueness as a person, which then obviously you then have to get into a tagline and a couple of words that mean something to other people. But then all your communications and everything that goes around that is what packages it all together going forward. So yeah, it took a long time, because I spent, having been a business owner for the last 11 years, all my time and all my energy has been about building the team and building the services and building the business, and not really about me. And I suppose, and I very purposely never wanted the business to be about me. I did a management buyout, so it was already an existing business when I bought it, and it's been going since 1984, so it was really well established. I was working as a contractor physio in the business, and as I say, did a management buyout back in 2013. So it's not it felt like my baby, but it wasn't my baby from a founder kind of perspective. So I didn't really have that emotional tie in the same way. And as I say, I never wanted the business to be about me as either the physio or my name above the door, because you tie all the value of the business then to yourself, and that makes it really hard to sell a business. And ultimately, because I'd bought the business, it was all about longevity and sustainability and serving our community. And therefore, regardless of what happened to me, either during my working career or at the end of my career, I still wanted it to continue on. So as I say, I spent many years building up everything around you, and it was the MBA and probably just this point at where I'm at, it was more around focusing back on who am I, and yeah, what value can I add to markets and business and organizations going forward.
And so how helpful was that? I know you've done the Goldman Sachs one, because that's something which we've discussed previously, and you found that beneficial. I'm interested to know, like, what was the thought process for you? Because I just, from looking at it, because I was the same. Look at this 2 years ago. I'm like, do I want to do an MBA? Do I want to do this Goldman Sachs? And it was because I was looking for what is that next step for me in what do I love doing? What do you want to do? So what was your thought process then when you were running this business, successful business? And what was your end game? What was your vision?
I think it was, I didn't really have a particular end game. I just knew I was a bit stuck. And what I mean by that is, so if I think of like Tops as my first baby, and then I actually physically had a baby, and then I went back to work, and then I physically had another baby, and I was like, this is the point where I'm not going back as a physio. So it was the point where I decided on my second maternity leave that I was no longer going to be clinical. And I massively underestimated the amount that being a physiotherapist was tied to my identity. So when people used to ask me, what do you do? It would just roll off my tongue, I'm a physiotherapist. And to suddenly not be able to say that was like a massive identity crisis for me. And I kept my HCP. I stopped working clinically in the business, but I was still, I suppose, because of the size of our business, I was the lead clinician still, really, in a way. But once I actually gave up my HCPC registration to legally be able to call myself a physiotherapist, that was again another identity crisis. But as I say, on that second maternity leave, it was just an opportunity to stop and reset and think, where am I going? And it's when I started working with a business coach who I got introduced to, a lovely lady, Penny, and she really empowered me from a way that I suppose women will relate to. Like, when you have babies and you're from maternity leave, you lose a lot of identity because it's not about you. You've given this is quite detailed and philosophical, but you've given your body to another person for a period of time. You lose all ability to act how you want to. You can't go out when you want to. You are just literally the life of another person, or giving life to another person. And that's, it's amazing and everything, but it's really draining, and it's you lose that ability to know where you're going. So as I say, on that second maternity leave, I started working with Penny, and she was the one, I didn't know at the time, but she was the one that encouraged me to apply for the Goldman Sachs, because she was like, you're really analytical, you can do business. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm winging it. I'd never even done business GCSE or A level. It was just kind of learning on the job. Like, my dad he owned his own business, so I think I had a very entrepreneurial mindset. I'd give anything a try. I'm happy to fail, but very open to learning and doing different things. But I had no formal education. I didn't know what was right, so I felt like it was a very long-winded way, and I hadn't really, which I have more recently, I hadn't really tagged onto how valuable mentors are. Like, up until probably the last year, I'd never had someone that I would call a mentor. And so, yeah, she said, apply for the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business course. And massive imposter syndrome. I was like, I can't do it. And she was like, yeah, you can, of course you can. And it's Oxford based. You've got a 10-month-old, you'll be fine, kind of thing. It will work. And as I say, she actually was one of the growth mentors on the course the first year I did it. So yeah, I did that, and it was like it's a mini MBA. It's a 4-month, but it's fantastically run, fully funded by Goldman Sachs, a great alumni network. And that's, I suppose, sparked my learning of business. So it wasn't so much, I'd done lots of practical experience. I'd run a business. I bought a business. Had I bought a second business at that point? No, I'd bought one business and set up another. I'd worked with business partners. We'd had an investor. I bought them out. There's loads of things that had happened. But I had no idea if they were correct or they were like, I was the head girl at school. I was like the proper, like everything had to be ticked box kind of correct. But I was winging it, and that felt really uncomfortable for me. So yeah, doing the Goldman Sachs program was the start of learning. And then I graduated just before COVID, and you write, as part of your graduation, you write this lovely growth plan of all these fantastic things you're going to achieve and how your business is going to grow. And obviously not one of us had on the risk register to that growth a pandemic that basically meant that all of our businesses died. And so, yeah, that obviously put a massive spanner in the works. So then in COVID, I was like, okay, I'd done the Goldman Sachs. That was like, it whet my appetite for academic learning of business. Let's go do a full MBA and really understand the theories behind things and create a larger network within business. And because of the pandemic, it really made me think, if I'm not going back to being a clinician, which I had already stopped 3 years before, and if I wanted to pivot into different careers or even different industries, I needed something. I needed the letters after my name. I wanted a formal qualification that said I knew what I was doing, rather than solely the practical experience that I had on my CV of running my own business. Because when you run your own business, like, I'm not accountable to anyone. Like, I'm accountable obviously from a legal governance kind of point of view of being a director of a company, but no one really knows how it's performing or whether it's doing well or anything. So it was, the full MBA was much more around what does the theory of business look like and how do I marry that with my actual practical experience, which actually meant then when I was on the MBA, there were things that I was like, well, that's great in theory, but that will never work in practice, because I already had that experience. I had already had that experience of being able to do it practically. And there are other things that I thought, oh wow, we've been doing that not wrong, but we could improve that so much more, because now I understand the tools or frameworks behind something. So it was a great time for me.
So so you've answered some of that in the last points there, but how much better do you think you are as a business leader, owner, investor, whatever it is now, having done those two qualifications, as to what you were like? Before you answer that, like, you also said your dad being an entrepreneur, you had two businesses, you did various things. So it sounds to me like you had pretty good exposure into that, albeit not theoretical. You had some really good, you were a pretty experienced business leader and owner at that point before doing those courses.
Yeah, but I think I'm naturally a perfectionist by heart, and I think, like, so my dad ran a great business in the 80s, a construction business, and it was quite big and it was successful. But then unfortunately, over various economic and different factors, it's not going anymore, and there's been a real change. So I'd seen the real highs of business, and I'd seen massive lows, like the financial impact of when businesses do go wrong. And I think for myself, I'd had some highs in business, and then I'd had some real bad lows, like falling out with business partners only 12 months into a plan, and basically having to buy my business twice, because I bought it with people and then I had to buy them out of the business within 12 months and then do it all on my own. I didn't feel confident. So I may have had a lot of life experience, but I think the lows and the failures really hit me hard and really hit me personally, as in because I'm the leader, because the buck stops with me and I've messed up, that really knocked my confidence. So do those courses, were there any light bulb moments that made it instantly I am better? Definitely not. But the accumulation of conversations, learning, experiences, and the biggest thing for me now is being able to, I felt like I should know everything. And because I didn't know anything, that you're just not authentic. You're not. It's really hard to fake that. And I know there's the saying, fake it until you make it and things. And yeah, you can do that to a degree, but can you sleep well at night? Do you really feel like is it ethical? Is it moral? Like, I don't know. Like, I struggled with that. So what do I feel now? I don't feel like I'm hugely, I am definitely more educated, but I think I'm much more confident to say what I do know and what I'm good at, and where really what I don't know. And I think that's also really hard as an SME owner, a small business owner, because you wear all these hats of HR, marketing, finance, leadership. You wear so many hats, and you wear them, and you can never do all of them, and you can never have, so you've got this massive breadth to your skill set, but no depth, no expertise. And that's where I felt really uncomfortable. So I think, even though an MBA, obviously you do 8 core modules across all. So I've done accounting, finance, I've done marketing, I've done operations management, but then you do your speciality, your like elective ones where you choose. And those 4 ones I went into kind of leadership, organizational performance, entrepreneurship. So you get to then kind of specialize. That allowed me to, I suppose, have the confidence to come out of it. And yes, I still think I have a really good understanding of how businesses work in all departments and all aspects, but I'm now much more happy to say I'm not going to be your CFO. I'm not going to be your accountant. I'm not going to sit on the spreadsheets. I can't do that processes, but what I can do is vision or inspiration or strategy or leadership around change. Like, that's where I can do. And I feel, as I say, I think it's just more the confidence to know what your skill set is, and where you can add value, and where you're happy to say, I don't know, and this is not an area that I feel comfortable in.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really personal thing, isn't it? Like, the way everyone feels differently about pretty much everything. No one's got a unique, everyone's got a unique response to things. So you've got to just do the best that you can do at that time, and hope that that's right. I mean, you can see how much passionate you are about making things good, and like being a driver, whatever that may be. So yeah, it's interesting as well. You're saying that it was probably more you learned the things that you didn't want to do or weren't best at from that, rather than, right, okay, yeah, I'm now going to do such and such, which in itself is really useful. So
and
would
I've
you?
come a bit full. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say,
No, no,
I've
go
come a
on.
bit full circle on that. In that, like my accounting and finance module on the MBA, I got a lot of help on the spreadsheets, because you do group exercises anyway. But I was like, what are you doing over there? Like, it felt like back at school, kind of not copying their work at all, because you then have to write your own essay. But the group work solidified the learning to then allow me to write to write the assignment afterwards. But I've realized that data is a massive aspect of future working going forward. Like, you need to be able to understand data, present data, data analytics. This is my belief. And so I'm now undertaking a data mentorship, because I was like, I have to know those skills. I hate being in a room and not feeling confident. I'm happy to not be in that room if it's not something I should be part of. But if I need to be part of that, and I want to be in that senior leadership, I wouldn't say leadership positions, but senior positions, driving the strategy of organizations, data is going to focus in there somewhere. And so I need to feel confident with data. So yeah, I'm going back to my Excel days, learning good practices of data management.
This is a really interesting insight. You're making a lot of notes here as well myself. So what did you study when you were at school?
Well, A-level wise?
Just, yeah, GCSEs, A-levels, like all your answers.
Yeah.
I'd be intrigued to hear what you did.
So GCSEs, I think my options were something like PE, definitely. All the sciences. I think it did geography. Yeah, I think so. Though, like, we did a really varied curriculum at school, but A-levels were biology, psychology, and sports studies, and English, actually. But yeah, I I had two things that came out on kind of those careers where they do your assessment of where you should be. One was a physiotherapist, and I think the other was into medicine. But my issue with medicine is that I hated, I don't think I got on with the teacher anyway, but I hated chemistry equations and I hated maths. Actually, I loved maths, but it was the equation side of everything. And I was like, that's, for medicine, you needed the traditional sciences. So psychology and sports studies don't count, as they're human sciences, but they don't count in medical application. So if I hadn't been a physio, I would have loved to be a sports medicine doctor. And if it wasn't going to be physio or sports medicine, I think I would have done something completely different. I don't know, maybe run something probably very corporate-y on the other end of the scale. But I loved working with people. I had a boyfriend when I was like 16 years old whose dad had a cervical injury when he was 18, 19. So he was in a wheelchair all of his life. He went to Stoke Mandeville quite often. And it fascinated me, his rehab, it fascinated me, his body, what he could and he couldn't do, and how you had to adapt to that. But also his mentality of, like, even though he'd been in a wheelchair since he was 19, nothing stopped him. He was such a strong man. And then I had a dad who loved Formula One and rugby, and he wanted me to be the England rugby physio. So, like, there were just lots of kind of different links. And so sport was a massive link for me. Yeah, my dad was really sporty when he was younger, basketball and volleyball in particular, like kind of national level. He was in the Guinness Book of Records actually for the longest ever group. They did like a marathon basketball game, so they kept going for like 2.5 days or something, him and his team. So yeah, sport was massive, people was massive, and a bit of I think it's definitely a bit of pushing boundaries. So even though I was head girl, I was probably, I wonder if that was a bit of a process of elimination rather than actually from the point of view of, I like to push boundaries. I like if someone says no to me, my first answer would be why, kind of. So I don't want rules for the sake of rules. And that probably maybe comes down to how my dad's influence on, yeah, just doing things a bit different, or that entrepreneurship kind of side of trying and hustling and yeah, all those life experiences and childhood influences that occur.
What about your mum? What did your mum do?
What did my mum do? So my mum, she worked in banks when she was younger, and then she used to work for 6 months of the year and disappear for 6 months of the year to, she would like just travel around Spain and France. This is like obviously pre-marriage, pre-kids. So she's a real, like, she's wanderlust. Like, she's never in the UK. She's traveling all the time, all over the place. But her work was, she was a proofreader. So she's proofread all my essays through 3 degrees. And tells me what good English grammar is, and that I can't do it, and no one does it anymore. So she's real pernickety on and pedantic on grammar and spelling and proofreading. She did stuff in advertising, and then she finished her career actually in as a like civil servant in a local council. So she didn't work through me and my sister's childhood. She yeah. So yeah, lots of different influences.
Yeah, no, there is. It is. Yeah, it's really interesting. So,
but we I'll just put one other thing about childhood, because that I think is quite, that I think informs me slightly. We had a place in Spain when I was growing up, and there were 2 things my dad always used to make me go do. I couldn't sit still. I had like I couldn't sit at a dinner table when we were out in a restaurant or something. So he had 2 jobs for me always to go do. Go and recce the area, it was always called. So I had to go out and go around the area, find where the toilets were. Like, he'd give me tasks to go do to keep me busy. And then the second thing he'd always get us to do is we had to go ask for the bill, or had to go ask for things. So you're in a foreign language, you're a kid, you can't speak the language or anything. And he was like, go and go and ask for the bill, or go, you want a lemonade, go and ask for a lemonade, kind of thing. And so he made us have to be in uncomfortable situations as kids, and I really appreciate that now. And when I've got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, and when they're like, can I have something, I'm like, well, you go ask for it. Like, you've got a voice, you ask for it at home, like, go and ask politely for something. So I really appreciate those learnings of making me at a very young age go and do things and go and have those conversations with people. Because I think the biggest thing of business is communication. How you can communicate with people is massive.
How did you feel about it at the time, having to go and do that stuff?
I was fine. Like, me and my sister are quite different personalities. She struggled with it, and so as 4 years older, she would go, Nick, you go do it, and I'd go, yeah, all right then. So but no, I had no problem with it. Yeah, no, I was very happy. I was happy to be busy.
Yeah. This actually does, it probably actually does all make sense now. Like, this is why you are who you are in terms of what you're doing. So, like, when you were doing, so you're doing physio, what did you envisage that was going to be? Like, what was the end game at that point?
I think I was still going into sports. I was definitely going to sports and MSK, but I graduated, or I was at uni at the point where physiotherapy was an NHS funded course. So we all got bursaries like nursing did. And what that meant is that even though it wasn't legally written in, there was a high expectation, or it was really the only expectation, is that when you graduated, you go into the NHS and do what was called your band 5 rotations. So you spend kind of 18 months to 2 years going around all the different specialities, like orthopedics, neurology, respiratory, cardiac, thoracic, like musculoskeletal outpatients. So every 4 months, I think it was, my rotations, you went into different areas. So at that point, when I worked in the NHS, I loved orthopedics. So hip replacements, knee replacements, I loved it. It was really quite process driven in some way. It was quite predictable outcomes. It was progressive from the point of view of, like, day 1 you get out of bed, day 2 you're walking, day 3, like, I could always see the progression, and that was quite important to me. So yeah, I spent quite a lot of time in orthopedics, and then I went over to, I had a boyfriend at the time that was a Kiwi, and he was going back to New Zealand. He was playing rugby over here in England, and he was going back to New Zealand, and I didn't have a gap year between a school and university. I just went straight in, and so I said, so we agreed that I would go traveling with him around Europe, all of Asia, and then we did Australia, and then landed in New Zealand because he was going to join the police there. So I packed up my life and I got a job over in New Zealand at Wellington Hospital. And that was a great experience. And I went with a very open ticket. I don't know how long I'm going to be here. We'll see how things go. And I stayed about a year. The relationship broke down, and I was very aware I was on the other side of the world from family. My sister was having children at that time. So I decided to come back. But I never really had, like, some people have a very set plan, and I watch some of the social stuff that people put out for emerging kind of practitioners and people coming through, and it's like, have a plan. And I really didn't have that. I think I was led by life a bit more. So it was like, oh, this boyfriend's going to New Zealand, let's go to New Zealand for a while. That didn't work, let's come back to the UK. So I knew when I came back, I went into so from 4 years graduated, I've been solely kind of musculoskeletal in sports and a bit of pelvic health. So I knew I wanted to do that, but I didn't know where that was. I always had in my mind that I would own a business at some stage, because I'd come from a family that owned business, and I found the red tape and the bureaucracy of working in the NHS really, really hard. So I was in private practice from 26. But I didn't know what that would look like. I didn't have like a 5-year plan. I don't think I've ever had that. And I still don't have that. So when on the MBA, there were people that were talking about their retirement plan, and or where they want to be at retirement, and I couldn't think that far ahead. I'm getting better at it, and I'm not saying you have to have it either, but I do think it guides your learning and your thought process if you do have a plan. So yeah, I have become more strategic over the years, but that definitely wasn't it. I was just someone that said yes to every opportunity. And I also, within about 18 months of being in any role, I moved on because I felt like I'd gained what I wanted out of it, and I don't like being stagnant or doing the same thing. So once I'd done that for about 18 months, it usually was, I was ready to move on. So yeah, I just kept, I think, building a breadth of experience in lots of different ways, and keep being challenged in new environments and with new people. That's what I wanted to, that's what I intuitively wanted to do, but I don't think I had a strategy to it.
Mm. And did you, it sounds like you enjoy work, that you really just enjoy working, you like doing things, achieving things. What was that the case?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, maternity leaves were actually quite hard for me, I think, mentally, because I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And I was even talking to someone the other day, and now my children are 8 and 6, and they're kind of in school or school related settings from like 7:30 till 5:30. I was like, that's a working day. I still do bits in the evening, but when they were younger, I was having to fit my working day between like 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Like, it was so hard, so hard. So I think I was very frustrated in not being able to develop and not be able to do and being restricted. So yeah, I do think I have now, I'm going to be 40 this year, and I have learned that I need to slow down a little bit. That whole kind of, it's a crap saying, isn't it? But you slow down to go faster. Because I have learned the benefit of reflection and the benefit of, I think I think that I'm an experiential learner. So usually I have to do something to learn it. You can't just tell me, I won't take it in, I have to do it. But by being that way, it can be a bit of a long-winded process, because I'm having to fail each time before I learn. And that's where I suppose what we were talking about, that benefit of mentors, I'm now seeing or finding the people that I value their expertise, and trying to ask those questions and be in those rooms where I can learn, rather than try to do it myself and fail and then have to find the right way to do it. So I'm trying to be a bit smarter on on learning and development, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's no absolute perfect way of doing it. What I thought was interesting, and that one of my chats I had with James Moore on this, he was saying when he was under Gwen Jewell in Australia, they had a brilliant cohort of people, but they had 30% of the learning, is what she said to James, is what you'll get from the didactic lectures, 30% from chatting to people on like the tutors, and then the rest of it comes from your colleagues and co-students, where it's that environment is key for it. So just being hand fed or given learning to do or presentations, that's a small proportion of how you learn.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's also what triggered me to go back into an educational or an academic setting. Was I was aware that owning your own business, and because of the size of the business, I suppose I wasn't learning. I was doing the same thing, and possibly doing the same thing wrong all the time, where I lacked a bit of that criticality, or also that peer network at that management leadership level, to bounce those ideas off people. So people massively stimulate me. And I think I don't know which way around it is, but either I'm an extrovert, introvert. I'm not a pure extrovert personality, in that actually I do now recognize that I need time on my own, and I need quiet time to actually replenish me. So I think being with people, it does energize me, the conversations and that stimulate me, but I can't do it all the time either. I do need that quiet time away. So I love to immerse myself with people, but then I do need to reflect on it afterwards. Otherwise, it's just a bit go, go, go. And that I don't find as sustainable And maybe it's just the fact that I'm now nearly 40 and not 20 anymore.
Hey, you're in your prime. Don't be saying that. You know,
Well,
us
they
all
say now,
down.
actually, what is it? It's like 20s, you make your mistakes. 30s, you do a bit of learning. 40s onwards, you actually start to make any progress.
Yeah, that could be good. Yeah, I feel like I'm about 20 years behind the curve. So whatever you say, I don't take it personally anyway on those things. But normally you will do. So so for you then, we'll come on to the mentors in a bit. For one, like, how do you switch off then? Because you've got a lot going on in your life, but how do you take down time to reflect on these things?
So running is a big thing for me. And running and just being outside, so being away from desks, screens, computers. I do listen to things on runs. Like, my husband thinks I'm crazy that I can listen to podcasts, but I can listen to podcasts, and I can. But it's what it is for me. Actually, what makes me switch off is to get away from what I do day to day. So what I do day to day is what I have now kind of called my operations. It's what I'm doing. It's a high degree of it is repetitive, or it's incremental kind of thing if you're changing things. Where when I get away from work, and when I've, like on the MBA, we would go away for 4 days on each module, and you get out of the environment that you're in, that's when my creativity comes, that's when my ideas then come, that's when I want to change things. So yeah, running is a massive thing for me, mentally as well as obviously physically. I've taught Pilates for years, but actually I love teaching Pilates, but for me, yoga is a massive thing for me now. Not like, I don't need to do full hour classes, but 20 minutes of focusing on breathing with movement in hard positions that means I have to concentrate is important. It also means I'm not checking emails or something else along. So it's that being present, and as I say, like, actually meditation, when my mind's racing in the evenings or anything, then a 5-minute kind of sleep meditation makes a massive difference to me. So yeah, different things like that. Family is important. Just being outside. Like, I'm from the country. Like, we live, our house was in the middle of nowhere. And so yeah, we went to New York for my husband's, and it wasn't his 40th, but one of his birthdays, 38th maybe. And I thought I would love New York. I found it so oppressive. I really struggled in the city. And then we got into Central Park, and I was like, oh, I can hear birds, I can see the sky. So I need space around me, most definitely. Like, I would take a small house with loads of land over a big house any day. So yeah, space is really important to me. Just that, and the biggest thing that I've realized with the business is you have to switch off. And because I've done it for 11 years now, and I don't think I have switched off a lot in that time. And we've had sometimes the business open 7 days a week with classes going on and things. So you are always like on call, and that's hard. I think I've had my time doing that. I need to find a different way of managing that, because you do. I don't know, do you wear wearables? Do you wear any Garmin?
I've got like an iWatch that I do track.
Yeah. So I got a Whoop, and it tells me like my recovery, and yeah, it's not where it should be most of the time. And I feel okay, like I can still go on it, but there's something telling you that you can't continue to do it that way. And I think, as I say, I've done a decade of a particular way of working. And that's the longest I've ever done and it's changed in that time, but I think I'm just at a point of change, and it's not an overnight thing. I'm not going to, I don't think I'm employable really anyway, since I've been self-employed since 26, but maybe it'll become a role where I'm more strategic, but it's me being like a consultant again. Which is what I've been, I suppose, how I started back, because I was been in the self-employed, when I've worked in private practice since 26, I've always been self-employed in that time.
So how did you end up buying the practice?
So I was working at, so when I came for the first initial interview, it was very bizarre. I was up in I was working in London in a private practice, and I knew I wanted to go do the MACP Masters up in Birmingham, and my mum at the time lived in Stratford upon Avon, so it kind of just all made sense. Boyfriend at the time was in Oxford, and so I went to do and did I stopped work for a year, so I only did like 5 or 8 hours a week clinically, and I did the Masters full time. And when I finished it, I had the choice to go back to the clinic I was at in London, because they wanted me back, or I was just flipping through, and physios will know what this is, but the CSP, the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy, produces a magazine called Frontline, and majority of us don't even open it, and kind of it just goes thrown straight into the bin. But I was coming to the end of my Masters, and I was like, I need to look at some jobs, and there was a job for the Oxford Physiotherapy Service, TOPS. And at the first time I went for the interview, the lady said to me, for health reasons, and because she'd been running it since 1984, she was like, I'm looking for someone to buy the business eventually. And so from literally at the interview, we started talking about the process of me buying the business off her. And I'd worked in quite a busy, quite modern clinic in London, and TOPS in Oxford at that time. It was a great lifestyle business. No one worked the evenings, no one worked Saturdays. It didn't really have a proper booking system. There were just a lot of, I could see, easy wins to grow it, and kind of low-hanging fruit. And so, yeah, it took a couple of years. It took probably about 3 or 4 years before we came to an agreement. And there came a point where I decided I definitely want to go do something on my own. And because the conversations weren't going anywhere with TOPS, that's where I'd met these 2 personal trainers and this investor. And we were like, let's just go set up our own thing in Oxford. And so while we were doing that, the conversation with buying the physio turned around at the same time. So we actually, on the same day kind of thing, completed on buying the physio business and set up a strength and conditioning facility on the other side of Oxford at the same time. And the plan was that I thought the conversations were going that they were going to be like, because I'd come out of UK athletics and like a talented athlete scholarship scheme at that point, which was very multidisciplinary working. So it was physios, nutritionists, S&C coaches all working together. And so that's what I thought we were setting up in Oxford. But it became very evident within 3 months that it was going to be a CrossFit box. And I was like, that's not what I signed up for. So that's when I left the strength and conditioning facility and just focused solely on TOPS and the physio kind of going forward, which was the best move. Like that whole, well, you've got business partners, like they said, like you have to pick them in some ways more than you would pick spouses, because you are really going into bed with them, most definitely. And I didn't do the due diligence. It was just, we were all swept up in a, won't this be a great idea kind of thing, and off, let's go with it. And there's definitely something in when you're spending someone else's money and investors' money instead of your own, that you probably, we raced ahead quite happily at that point. And yeah, as I say, within less than a year, I didn't want to own a CrossFit box. They just wanted to train 3 times a day. And that it was just not going to be a long-term business relationship. What's your experience with business partners?
Well, I actually don't have any business partners directly, so
okay.
the equip's 100% mine. But we've got suppliers, so that's a big thing for us. So we've worked with these companies for 10+ years, some less, some more, and that is crucial. Like we definitely have to align on vision, how you're looking to approach things. We're very education centric with how we're trying to support it. If they're not going to support us with that, it's not going to be good. So that's a massive thing for me. And it's also, it's like, I just want to enjoy what I'm doing. It's like, you want to make money, and it's just, I want to be with people that I enjoy. Whether it doesn't mean they need to be having a laugh all the time, but you want it to be that you've got similar drives and things. So Yeah, albeit no direct partners, which I'm sure is different because ultimately it does all fall on me. You still want employees, partners, whatever it is, just you got to just have that shared common goal and values, and it is all bit stuff that people talk about, but it's definitely true.
Yeah. Where we like, I'm so glad my friend who was a commercial lawyer at the time made us do proper shareholders agreements and everything, because a lot of those kind of agreements and contracts, you only need them when things are going wrong, and things were going really wrong. And so, yeah, I'm so glad we had done the proper legal side, because it made the it made that process so much easier. But yeah, within a year of owning a business, I'd also left a business.
Well, I think the thing is though, that's a good experience, albeit not pleasant at the time. Probably it's a new learning.
Oh, definitely. But I think I also maybe had it probably put me off having business partners for a long time, and decided that I can only do it on my own, or I only want to do it on my own. Where I'm now, I think, again, with that kind of time and confidence and things, I would go into it in a much more professional and strategic way, which I just didn't do when I was younger. But yeah, all experiences are great experiences. I was the fittest I've ever been. If you own a CrossFit box, like, for all whatever people say about CrossFit, you do get fit.
Yeah. So how did who were those people then that you went into partnership with? How did that come about?
I messaged, I was looking at, as I say, just doing my own private physio thing, and I messaged a local personal training studio saying, do you just have a room I can rent? And the guy replied saying, I think he said yes. He either said yes or no. I can't remember, but he's like, can we just have a conversation anyway? And I was like, yeah, of course. And we went for coffee, and he said, look, we're actually, yes, I've got this personal training studio. And he was in partnership with someone else with that. But he's like, I'm about to open, or I want to open this big strength and conditioning facility. And I was like, brilliant. Like, I'll lead on the health rehab physio side of that. And that's where that conversation happened quite quickly. So it was just a cold email to a random personal training studio, and then kind of conversation snowballed from there, really.
So yeah, so like that, you went into some quite a deep partnership with them then, like in terms of doing it. How long had you known them then before you'd agreed to do that?
Um, Probably took about 3-4 months of planning overall.
Mm.
Yeah, it was relatively quick. We all had to put some, like, the investor was like, you've got to put some skin in the game. And we're like, okay. So we all had to put like, I think we had to put like 2 grand in, and then he put like 100 grand in. Like, it was, so it was enough. It was enough to show that we were all involved, and most definitely we were. Um, but it was more just what you were just talking about. What we didn't have was a shared. We thought we had a shared vision, but I think if we actually had then gone around the room and articulated what that vision was, it would have been highly different. We definitely didn't have shared values. I don't think we even discussed values at that point. But we did have an ambitious goal. We knew what we were aiming for, but we had no direction of how to get there. We all, because we decided there was a stage where we were not working well together and we needed to sort it out. We all went and did Myers-Briggs tests, like the personality tests. And me, and who I think I was like given the title of like operations, and who was like the guy who was like the CEO. Me and him are both alpha personalities, and he's like ex-military and quite just a strong personality. And I just wouldn't take any of it. And I think we just butted, like, we got on, but when it came to business, it was just like, it was his way. And I was like, but it's not the right way, or it's not a collaborative way. We need to discuss this. But at that point, he'd already gone on and done something else. So it was just messy. It was really messy. It was great fun, but it was messy.
Yeah, and you just still ever see them now?
No, we don't actually. One guy's gone back he was Australian, and he's gone back to Australia. When we separated all the businesses out, Tops, the physio side, still owed the investor a bit of money. So I paid that off, and then that was like, have a good life kind of thing. And the guy who owns the strength and conditioning facility, it's still going. So even though we all struggled, he's kept it all going. And so no, we don't cross paths, but yeah, they've got a business still running, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not always that, oh, they're bad, I'm good. It's not always about being good and bad, is it?
Definitely
It's
not.
just different, isn't it? Different good people, bad. It doesn't really exist, I don't think.
No, and I think that's probably the other thing that's come with age for me. There's no right or wrong. Like I was constantly obsessed with what's the right way to do something, and not want, because I didn't want to do it the wrong way. And it's like there is no right or wrong way. There is your way. And there are lots of different ways. That whole kind of saying there's loads of ways to skin a cat, I never really understood that one. But there are lots of different ways of doing things, and you find your own path, most definitely. And I've become comfortable with that my path doesn't need to compare to anyone else's. It doesn't need to compete with anyone else's. It can just be me. Is it? I can never pronounce his surname. Alex Hormozy. Do you know who I mean?
Hormozy, yeah.
He says that saying like you be you, and me and my friends kind of joke about it, something when someone wants to wear something and you're like, oh, kind of, that's interesting outfit or something. It's like you be you, like you. And I don't think it's meant I think sometimes it can be meant a little bit kind of flippantly, or it could be meant not in an assaulting way, but I'm like, actually that's where I very much am now, headspace wise, of you be you, and you, like, whatever goes. And so I've got comfortable with grey, like doesn't need to be black or white. I've got comfortable with grey. I've got comfortable with I don't know. I've got comfortable with things not being right or wrong, so they're just being a middle fence, and that's okay as well. But yeah, I think that wasn't me 10, 20 years ago, kind of thing. But that has come with the time and experience, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't think it's easy. It's easy to say that as well, isn't it? Oh, you've got to just be you. And I think it's difficult in certain circumstances. If you can do it, it's definitely good, because really, who cares what anyone else thinks? But it's not easy to be like that, for sure. So it's
No,
healthy if
and
you can get down that route.
you can't force it, and it's taken a lot of like dark moments and self-reflection and things, but this is where I am at the moment. Doesn't mean I'll be here for ages, but or this is it, kind of thing. Because that's the other thing, I suppose. I did get comfortable with change, because of changing jobs, changing places to living in the world. I moved house a lot, but yeah, you have to be comfortable with that. But you do need some roots, and I don't think I had roots or understanding of who I was, and therefore you just move with the tide around you, kind of thing, or what the latest trend or whatever someone's doing, but I didn't really have any strong opinions or values of my own, and that's taken time to develop.
Mm. So what do you see as the plans for you, and the vision and mission and all those different things for you going forward? What are the projects you're looking at?
So I'm doing some quite exciting. So I'm a director of a group called the Musculoskeletal Partners Network. So we're a trade organisation driving quality standards in MSK care. So that's opened up a great network. Predominantly, actually, it's London based, and I used to obviously live and work in London. So it's been really nice, kind of on a monthly basis, going back into London. And the reason you're saying I was like kind of maybe tired this, but today will be my third day going back to London, which is not what a normal week is for me. And so that's quite tiring, but great, like stimulating, great conversations, great things happening. I invested in a couple of companies last year and the back end of last year, which I've really enjoyed. One is Hytro, a BFR, blood flow restriction training, and Another Round, who are an AI fitness company. So it's been great getting to know the teams, and then on the back of that, I'm starting to do some more strategic advisory. I'm starting to do strategic advisory roles for organisations. So some with the companies I've invested in, and some other companies as well. So I'm really enjoying taking my knowledge, my experience, and using it in different challenges, not solely on my own business as well. And I think I'm if you give me a challenge, give me a problem, something that needs sorting, that's where I excel. I don't excel in when things are going well and they're stable. I'm more, and I really am aligned to this, I think, the startup, small business world, because it's just the speed it works at. I love. I don't want things to move slowly. I like that not one day is the same as the next day. I like that not one challenge is the same as the next challenge. And it requires quite a broad skill set, a generalist skill set, to try to address some of those, because you don't have a big, I don't know, either HR department that you could go ask for something, or a special, like, you have to be resourceful with what's around you. And that really plays to my skill set, most definitely.
Yeah.
So hopefully more going forward, some more, strategic advisory roles, different networks that are out of that broaden from physiotherapy, healthcare, because physio is not, I think I struggle to see the future of physio under purely NHS public health systems. I think we're moving more and more into consumer self-pay markets, direct to consumer, which is what my whole experience is. And I think that's quite an exciting time as well. So yeah, I more within that kind of human performance sphere.
So what would your advice be for people either looking to get into, whether it's physio business? Like, I agree with you. I think that the market has completely changed in the last 4 years, particularly. It's totally different now. So what would your advice be to people in this space or wanting to get into it?
I think look ahead of, like, there's so much visibility now. Like, I was on LinkedIn years ago, but we didn't do anything on it. Like, we just all had a profile picture, and you occasionally got kind of connection requests and you binned them out of your email. Like, so I think you've got such visibility now globally of people in different points of their career. So find them that you think that inspires me in some way, or that's interesting, and then research them and ask for that conversation. As I say, we have visibility and we have access now to some brilliant people all over the world. And when I finished my MBA, I was like, oh, maybe let's do a PhD now. And so I spoke to a couple of people who'd done DBAs, which is the equivalent of a PhD in business. So it's a doctorate of business administration. And I spoke to one guy over in, I think he was in Texas or Oklahoma. Like, you just have this global network around you now that is accessible. So use it strategically. Don't annoy people, and but there's an ability to see people's paths. There's transparency a little bit more in career paths and what they've done. And people are obviously happy to talk about and give advice. So I think it's just looking at where you want to be in 5 or even 10 years time, working backwards what those steps might entail, and then who support, what do you need to do to get there. I think that big saying of have the end goal in mind I don't think I did have that for a long time. But yeah, I think it's much easier to see that now, and to have that, as I say, transparency of what people have achieved.
Yeah, and well, all your experiences have helped guide you, because you just didn't know at that point. I guess that's what it was. You just didn't know what it was. But now with all these experiences, I guess that's helped you funnel you to where you are now.
Yeah, and it's not one thing. You have to put yourself out there. You have to do different things, and it's the accumulation of all of that together. It's not, there's no one event or one silver bullet. There might be things that change your trajectory, most definitely, but I definitely believe it's the accumulation of things that makes a difference.
Great. No, I appreciate it. Well, your background definitely is very unique with the academic stuff you've done, physio combined with the businessing, investing. So it's, yeah, well done for doing what you are before 40 as well. So that's really good. And I look forward to seeing what you get up to in the coming years.
Yeah, I think the investor part is interesting, because again, I now feel like a complete beginner. So you have to, those phases of your life where you get to the point of being like an expert kind of thing, because you've got that experience, but then you have to go through that next stage and go back to being at the bottom of the rung again and learning. But that's what makes it interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. So albeit you said at the start that you hate not knowing anything in that room, you just like putting yourself in that situation all the time and then building up to it.
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, I'm happy to put myself there and see what happens.
No, it's great. No, it's really good. It's very inspiring. So yeah, well done so far, Nicola, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Andy.